Imagine a world where the sky glows orange with the light of unending fires, and the air thrums with the ceaseless clang of machinery. A world so consumed by industry that night and day blur together under a pall of smog. Here, every hour is a work hour, and every worker is but a cog in an unimaginable machine. Welcome to a forge world, the iron heart of the Imperium of man, where never-ending work is not just a slogan, but a way of life. In the grim darkness of the far future, war is eternal. And for war to be eternal, so too must the labor that feeds it. On forge worlds, billions toil endlessly to supply the Imperium's insatiable need for weapons, vehicles, and technology. Entire continents are covered by colossal factories, forge temples that stretch from horizon to horizon, pounding and churning without pause. From orbit, a forge world might look like a glowing ember against the void, crisscrossed with the lights of superstructure and the fires of industry. Down below, the landscape is a labyrinth of towering smokestacks and miles-high assembly spires, linked by a maze of conveyor causeways and hissing pipe networks. Rivers long ago turned to chemical sludge. The air is toxic and metallic, and any oceans have been boiled off to expose more mineral-rich bedrock to mine. It's a place where the concept of a quiet, clean countryside is as alien as the Xenos, and where the sound of silence has been banished perhaps forever. What exactly is a forge world? In the simplest terms, it's a planet devoted entirely to manufacturing and research, directly controlled by the Adeptus Mechanicus, those mysterious priest-engineers of Mars. Think of an entire world turned into one gigantic factory complex and library of ancient tech, and you have the right idea. Each forge world is effectively sovereign under the tech priests, an empire within the Imperium where the rule of Mars and the cult Mechanicus holds absolute sway. These worlds exist for one purpose: to fuel humanity's galactic war machine. Every tank used by the Imperial Guard, every power armor plate of a space marine, every last gun, every battleship component. If it wasn't built on a forge world, it was likely built with designs, tools, or expertise originating from one. The Adeptus Mechanicus have a monopoly on technical knowledge in the Imperium, and forge worlds are their strongholds, their cathedral factories, and their homes. A brief history, from Red Mars to a galaxy of forges. It all began on Mars, known to the Mechanicus as Sacred Mars, the first and greatest of all forge worlds. Long before the Imperium as we know it existed, Mars had risen as a beacon of technology in humanity's dark ages. Isolated from Terra during the Age of Strife, the tech savants of Mars survived by embracing machines and developing a creed that blended science with religion: the cult Mechanicus, the worship of the machine god. By the time the Emperor of Mankind united Terra and reached out to Mars in the 30th millennium, Mars was a fully fledged industrial civilization, an iron kingdom with its own titans, starships, and armies of cybernetic soldiers. The Emperor's arrival was seen by many Martian priests as the fulfillment of prophecy, the Omnicia, the machine gods chosen, walking among them. In a pact legendary for its importance, the Emperor forged the Treaty of Mars, a union that brought Mars into the newborn Imperium as an ally rather than a conquered subject. Under this alliance, Mars, and by extension the tech priesthood, retained control over its domain and forge worlds in exchange for arming the Emperor's Great Crusade. With the Treaty of Mars, the Adeptus Mechanicus, as they would later be called, became the tech backbone of the Imperium. Legions of tech priests and colonists from Mars fanned out with the Crusade fleets. Whenever a new sector was brought into Imperial compliance, a forge world was often established, or an old lost one was reclaimed. Hundreds of Forge worlds sprang up or rejoined across the galaxy, each one a seed of Mars's culture planted on new soil. Some were built from the ground up on resource-rich planets, while others were rediscovered isolated human industrial worlds from ages past that eagerly welcomed reunion with Mars. In time, these worlds formed a vast network, the cult Mechanicus spreading its faith of knowledge and industry far and wide. The Adeptus Mechanicus became an empire within an empire. They owed loyalty to the Emperor, whom they view as the Omnicia, yet they governed their own planets, fleets, and armies. They answer to their own hierarchy, with the Fabricator General of Mars as their supreme leader, and follow their own scriptures. Forge worlds, large and small, are bound to Mars by fealty and shared belief, but each has a degree of autonomy to pursue its own research and specializations. In true feudal fashion, major forge worlds often have smaller vassal forges or outposts in neighboring systems, all contributing to the greater whole. But whether great or minor, all forge worlds share certain traits: an unwavering dedication to production, an endless quest for technological knowledge, and a zealous reverence for the machine god. Life and society on a forge world. If you were born on a forge world, chances are your fate was decided early, perhaps even before birth. The tech priests waste no time in measuring and categorizing every newborn in their domain. Genetic screening, aptitude tests, bionic implantation, all can start at a young age. The most intellectually promising infants and children will be earmarked for the priesthood itself, groomed to become the next generation of tech adepts. Those with the strongest bodies and steady nerves might be selected for the Skitarii legions, the Mechanicus' cybernetic soldiers and guardians, or other militant wings like the Titan crews. And the rest? They become the billions of menials, the labor force that keeps the furnaces lit and the assembly lines moving. On a forge world, being a mere factory worker is not a lowly job. It is the essential majority. These workers, sometimes called menials or labor units by their priestly overseers, will spend their entire lives tending to one small part of the great machine that is their world. Imagine being the third generation in your family to operate the same drilling rig or monitor the same cogitator terminal in a power plant. Your grandparents, your parents, and now you all lived and died in the service tunnels beneath some megaforge, making sure a coolant valve stays in the green. That scenario is very normal on a forge world. Upward mobility is almost non-existent unless a tech priest notices you and elevates you, and usually that means you had some latent technical genius, or perhaps you volunteered for cybernetic augmentation to become more useful. The society is rigid, a place where everyone knows their role, and deviation is rarely tolerated. The stern Magos in charge of your district has no patience for dreamers or troublemakers. Those who slack off or rebel might find themselves repurposed. And by repurposed, I mean precisely what you think. Servitors, the lobotomized cyborg drones that perform the mindless or highly specialized tasks, are in constant demand. The broken, the criminal, the insurgent, or simply the extremely unlucky, can end up on the operating table, getting their brains surgically scooped and replaced with a cogitator unit. After that, they'll live out, if you can call it living, their days hardwired into a wall or trudging in endless circles carrying heavy loads with no memory of their former self. On a forge world, this fate is considered a necessary recycling of resources. Nothing wasted, not even human bodies. Despite how oppressive this sounds, for the average citizen of a forge world, life isn't hell so much as it is drudgery. In fact, to them it might feel normal. They know nothing else. Their city sprawls are akin to the hive cities of other Imperial worlds, crowded hab blocks, grimy streets, or maintenance hallways more likely, and an ever-present haze of smoke. They might get a few hours of sleep in a hab unit coffin bunk. Then it's back to the manufactorum for another 12, 14, 16-hour shift. Time is relative when the factories never stop. Entertainment might be limited to maybe tuning into a binaric cant broadcast of approved liturgies or attending a brief cult ceremony to recite the litany of maintenance on the weekend, if they get a day off at all. If this sounds dehumanizing, that's because it is. But it's also very imperial. Most Imperial subjects live hard lives. Forge Worlders are simply distinctive for living hard lives centered entirely around heavy industry and tech. One could ask, what keeps these people going? Part of the answer is faith and pride. Yes, even the downtrodden pipe fitters and foundry line workers on a forge world often take pride in what they do. They know that without their output, Imperial soldiers at the front might not have tanks to ride or bullets to shoot. There's a grim honor in being a small part of this massive engine that defends humanity. And being born and raised under the cult Mechanicus, they have been taught that labor is holy. The machine god blesses those who keep the machines running. Every turn of a wrench is an act of devotion. A common saying in some forge temples goes, "To work is to pray." In other words, by servicing the machines, they are participating in a grand ritual that sustains the god of all machines. That mentality can keep you going when your hands are blistered and your lungs are black with soot. You're not just earning a wage. In fact, wages may not even exist in the normal sense on these worlds. Your reward is survival and sanctification. You're doing the Emperor's work via the Omnissiah's grace. However, let's not sugarcoat it. Life on a forge world is harsh even by Imperium standards, and that's saying something. The environment alone would kill an unaugmented off-worlder in some places. Toxic fumes, radiation leaks, extreme heat near the forges. Forge worlders often have to be fitted with rebreathers or minor augmetics just to endure their workplace. Many citizens sport mechanical limbs or implanted filters, not as fancy upgrades but as replacements for body parts that failed or as basic protection. It's quite possible your average Forge World factory foreman has a bionic arm, the original lost in an industrial accident decades ago, and augmetic eyes to see in the dark or through smoke. These are not luxuries. They are the price of living amid constant industry. The cult of the machine, society on Forge Worlds, is ruled by the Adeptus Mechanicus, and their creed dominates daily life. The cult Mechanicus holds that the Emperor is the Omnissiah, the physical embodiment of the machine god's will. But their religion is distinct from the more common Imperial creed. For them, knowledge itself is divine. Every machine that works, every technological principle, is an echo of the machine god, the machine spirit. The notion that every complex device has a spirit or personality that must be appeased is taken very seriously. If a vehicle breaks down or a reactor misfires, the tech priests don't just grab a tool set. First, they likely chant a litany of appeasement, offer sacred oils or incense, and only then commence repairs with utmost reverence. Outsiders might see a lot of superstition or even madness in this, picturing a red-robed priest intoning prayers while slowly tightening a bolt with an ivory-handled wrench etched in runes. It might seem comical from a modern perspective, but in the 41st millennium, this is just proper maintenance procedure. On a forge world, these rituals are everywhere. Every morning shift change might begin with a chant of activation to kindly beseech the machineries to run smoothly. The workers probably know the words by heart, even if they don't fully understand them. Often it's techna lingua, a coded language of the Mechanicus, or just techno-babble syllables meant to mimic binary. And woe to the ignorant off-worlder who barges in and flips a switch without permission. That's practically sacrilege. The proper way would be to first intone the canticle of engagement and make the sign of the cog over the console. Yes, it's absurd in a sense, the fusion of advanced science and ritual mysticism, but that's the core of Mechanicus ethos. This culture of machine worship has another effect. Innovation is stifled. On Forge worlds, people do not invent new technologies freely. That risks heresy. They follow the old designs passed down from the dark age of technology, the mythical golden era of mankind's technological mastery. Building something strictly by the blueprint is akin to following scripture. Changing the blueprint is blasphemy, unless you're a high-ranking Magos with sanction to conduct controlled experimentation, and even then, changes are incremental and viewed with suspicion. This is why each Forge world tends to have its own patterns of equipment rather than fundamentally different inventions. They might tweak a design slightly over centuries, leading to a unique local variant, but they rarely create something completely original from scratch anymore. To do so would risk accusations of tech heresy, the kind of thing that in the past created monsters like the Iron Men, the legendary revolt of AI robots that nearly destroyed humanity once. Indeed, one of the strictest tenets they hold is, "Thou shalt not suffer the machine spirit to be usurped by the soulless machine." In plain terms, the creation of true artificial intelligence is the ultimate sin, known as the folly of the men of iron. That ancient catastrophe is never forgotten on Forge worlds, and thus the Adeptus Mechanicus much prefer a human brain in a jar, like a servitor control unit, over a free-thinking computer. They'll happily employ cogitators, essentially very advanced but non-sentient computers, or even use enslaved alien minds in extreme cases, but an AI that thinks for itself. Exterminate on sight. So picture an entire society where half the population are cyborgs and the other half are on their way to becoming cyborgs, where Deus ex machina isn't a literary device, but literally the god from the machine they pray to. And you begin to grasp how different Forge worlds are from, say, a normal human agri-world or hive city. The tech priests themselves, those who rise into the Adeptus Mechanicus, often shed much of their humanity, at least physically. They shroud themselves in billowing robes of red and brass, not to appear mystical, but mostly to cover the array of bionic limbs, mechadendrites, mechanical tentacle arms, and glowing implants that sprout from their bodies. A high-ranking Magos might have more in common with the machines he oversees than with baseline humans. Many have replaced their eyes with multispectrum ocular devices, their blood with some biofluid, their brains augmented with logic circuits. They communicate with one another in binary cont, a burst of tech speech faster and more precise than human language. Imagine two modems screeching at each other, but those screeches carry nuanced meaning. To a layperson overhearing two priests converse, it might sound like weird static or robotic dolphin noises. And when they do speak in high or low Gothic, the common human languages, they often sound oddly flat or distorted by Vox synthesizers. Some can't be bothered to speak normally at all, preferring to let a cherub or servo skull announce their words in a booming mechanical voice for them. For the ordinary workers, the tech priests are distant overlords, part holy men, part taskmasters. The adepts reside in the central forge shrines and research domes, places the average laborer might never see from the inside. They might catch sight of a Magos gliding by on a hover skull platform, or walking along a high balcony occasionally, a cluster of servo skulls flitting around him like skull-faced pixies. But that's about it. When something goes wrong on the line, a lesser tech priest engine seer shows up, fixes the machine with the requisite prayers, maybe punishes a worker for neglecting the machine's spirit, if that's deemed the cause, and then vanishes back to his workshop. Work, work, and never-ending work. The phrase never-ending work truly captures the essence of a forge world. The forges literally never stop. They run at all hours with multiple shifts, sometimes overlapping. There is no weekend where production halts. That concept is almost heretical, because if the manufactorum falls silent, even for a moment, that's lost output, and possibly a sign of failing faith. Many forge worlds rotate crews in and out in a rolling cycle to keep the machines going continuously. And if, say, a massive forge needs to be shut down for maintenance, that's an event in itself. It might require sign-off from the fabricator locum, the second in command, and involves complex rerouting to ensure another facility picks up the slack. Picture an oil refinery or steel mill in our world, which might run 24/7 for months at a time. Now multiply that in scale to a planetary level, and you start to see the scope. Why such intensity? Because the Imperium's appetite for war material is bottomless. There are millions of soldiers spread across millions of worlds, all needing guns, ammo, vehicles. There are battle fleets needing replacement parts and new ships. There are even civilian sectors, agri-machines, mining equipment, etc., which rely on Mechanicus supplies. If one Forge world's output falters, whole warfronts could falter with it. The Imperium would crumble if not for the relentless supply chain maintained by these worlds. The Adeptus Administratum even grades Forge worlds by how much they produce. They assign titles like Grade 1 Maximus to the most productive ones, basically saying this planet produces an astronomical amount of goods, down to Grade 4 for the small fry that maybe only supply a subsector's needs. You can imagine the pride at stake. A Magos of a Grade 1 Forge world likely considers themselves hot stuff and will work everyone even harder to keep that status. If, throne forbid, they were downgraded to Grade 2, that might be cause for a series of disciplinary motivations to boost output again, and some stern words when Mars calls asking what's going on. Outputs of the Forge. Let's delve into what these worlds produce. Everything. Truly, nearly anything technological in the Imperium has passed through Mechanicus' hands. The macro scale, great void ships that sail between stars often have components forged on a Forge world, if not the whole ship at a shipyard Forge world orbiting a planet. The micro scale, the very bullets, called rounds or munitions, fired by a guardsman's rifle are stamped out in the billions in endless bullet factories on some distant Forge world, packaged into crates and shipped to the front lines in a steady stream. In between those extremes, you have tanks, aircraft, artillery, robots, generators, communications gear, power armor suits, bionic implants. You name it. The variety is mind-boggling, yet also standardized in its own arcane way. The Mechanicus uses ancient blueprints known as STC, Standard Template Construct Patterns, as the basis for designs. So a Lehman Russ battle tank is a Lehman Russ nearly everywhere you go. But, and here's the catch, each Forge world might have its own pattern of Lehman Russ. These patterns are like regional dialects of a language. They're all saying Lehman Russ tank, but one might have a slightly different armor alloy, or a different engine design, or the turret shape varies, etc. For instance, the Mars pattern Lehman Russ might be the original template. A Forge world like Phaeton might produce the Phaeton pattern Lehman Russ that has a locally developed suspension system and a distinctive look to the treads. Are these differences huge? Not usually. They try to stay true to the STC as much as possible, but over 10,000 years, little deviations creep in or are deliberately engineered to suit local needs or resources. And the Mechanicus, being tinkerers at heart, careful tinkerers, often take pride in their particular patterns. It's like how different forge temples season the sacred designs with their own traditions. This means that on a battlefield, an observant quartermaster might tell which forge world supplied a regiment's gear by the style of it. Oh, those basilisk artillery pieces have trailing cogs on their barrel engraving. They must be Vanaheim pattern. That's from Forge World Vanaheim. It's a bit of a signature. Now, does the common soldier care? Not really. A tank is a tank when you're facing a horde of orcs. But for the Mechanicus, these distinctions matter. The pattern is almost like a holy lineage of the machine's genealogy, and it's why tech priests get really fussy about mixing parts. The wrong pattern part in a different pattern machine might not fit right, and even if it does, it is considered impure to do so without proper rituals of reconciliation. The Forge worlds also excel at the exotic and the extremely complex. The most complicated war machines of the Imperium, like the Titan God engines, are beyond the ability of any regular factory world or artisan. Only a Forge world's forges, with the most learned magi and the biggest industrial infrastructure, can produce something like a warlord-class Titan, a walking battle fortress that stands dozens of meters tall. Titans are so monumental and require such rare tech components that only a handful of Forge worlds even have Titan manufactories. Those that do become renowned for it. Griffon 4, for example, was home to the Titan Legio Griffonicus and had the facilities to build and repair their Titans. Mars, of course, being the first, had multiple Titan legions and the know-how to create all classes of Titans. Other Forge worlds might specialize. Ryza became famous for mastering plasma weaponry, producing advanced plasma guns and reactor cores with fewer catastrophic meltdowns, a big plus when dealing with volatile plasma tech. Metallica, if the name didn't give it away, specialized in heavy metal manufacturing, from tanks to entire HAB structures, and did so in vast quantity. Styges V became known, and somewhat distrusted by others, for dabbling in more experimental tech and covert schemata, even rumored to incorporate xenotech in their secret labs. Officially a heresy, but if true, they hide it well under claims of just improved STC derivatives. Then there are the more mundane outputs which are still critical, agri-tech like harvest engines and irrigation systems. Yes, Forge Worlds build farming machines too, which feels ironic since they likely have no farms of their own. They produce the mining drills and plasma cutters that other mining worlds use. They print the Vox units and cogitators used in offices across the Administratum. If it's technology and the Imperium uses it, a Forge world likely had a hand in it somewhere. This even extends to Astartes, Space Marine equipment. Though Space Marines have their own skilled artificers and tech marines to do small-scale armory work, the creation of their power armor suits, bolt guns, and especially their more advanced vehicles and starships originally stems from Mechanicus Forge capabilities. Many chapters maintain a close relationship with a particular Forge world to resupply or get new war gear. For example, the Ultramarines source some equipment from Forge World Conor in Ultramar, etc., an empire of steel and data. It's worth noting that Forge Worlds are not just factories, but also massive repositories of knowledge. Deep in their data vaults lie technical lore and secrets that have been preserved, and at times lost, over millennia. Some Forge worlds devote enormous sections of their hive-like structures to archives and libraries. Endless stacks of blueprint scrolls, data crystals, and backup cogitator cores containing everything from standard field maintenance manuals to the last known copy of some ancient Titan's machine, Spirit, personality imprint. Legions of low-ranking adepts and servitors maintain these archives, copying deteriorating records, cross-referencing data, or just guarding forbidden sections, like designs deemed too dangerous to use. It's said that on some forges, as much as a third of the infrastructure is essentially data storage and the support systems for it. Picture a whole sub-city of data stacks and memory vaults, tended by monks in red robes with electrographs on their skulls, linking them to the information network. That's a real thing on many Forge worlds. They consider it a sacred duty to preserve these fragments of the past, for the quest for knowledge is eternal. Every scrap of approved knowledge recovered or recorded is a step closer to the machine god's ultimate truth. Of course, not all knowledge is open access. Far from it. Much is restricted to those of sufficient rank. A junior tech adept might only be allowed to know the intricacies of, say, maintaining loss guns, but not the source code of a Legio Cybernetica robot. Information is power, and the Mechanicus guards it jealously. Sharing valuable data with outsiders, even other imperial institutions, can be a political dance. Sometimes they do, for a price or favor, but often they'll offer the service of performing a task rather than giving out the knowledge behind it. For example, if the Imperial Guard needs a new type of virus bomb, they'll ask a Forge world to make it. The Mechanicus will oblige, maybe after some haggling and an exchange of rights or artifacts, but they might not hand over the blueprints for how to make it. That remains their secret. When Forge worlds go to war. Considering how vital these worlds are, it's no surprise they are often targets in war. An enemy who captures or destroys a Forge world delivers a hammer blow to the Imperium's logistics. And conversely, the Mechanicus will go to extreme lengths to protect or retake a Forge world under threat. Many a campaign has been decided by the fighting over a single Forge planet. Fortunately for the Imperium, Forge worlds are tough nuts to crack. These planets are fortresses in their own right. They bristle with defenses, void shield networks, planetary defense laser batteries, grids of anti-orbital missiles, not to mention the standing armies. Every Forge world maintains its own military forces. Foremost among them are the Skitarii legions, cybernetically enhanced soldiers, ranging from ranger squads with implanted targeting eyes to hulking combat servitors loaded with heavy weapons. These troops often outnumber the planetary defense forces of equivalently populated worlds, because Forge worlds have the means to arm and augment their soldiers lavishly. If that weren't enough, many Forge worlds house one or more Titan legions. Titans are the colossal walking war machines revered as avatars of the machine god's wrath. A single Titan can level a city. A whole legion of them based on a Forge world is a nightmare for any invader to face. The sight of multiple god machines striding out from their Titan hangars, weapons charged, is enough to give even the bravest enemy commander second thoughts. Different Forge worlds have ties to different Titan legions. Mars itself hosts the Legio Ignatum and others. Lucius is home to the Legio Astorum, Warp Runners. Metallica fields the Legio Metallica, Iron Skulls. Griffon 4 had Legio Griffonicus, and so on. These god engines stand guard over their home forges until duty calls them elsewhere. Additionally, Forge worlds also produce and maintain night suits. Smaller, one-pilot combat walkers often sworn to Mechanicus-aligned nightly houses. So, in battle, you might see ranks of Skitarii soldiers supported by clanking Castellan robots and towering Imperial knights, all marching to reclaim a breached factory district. Let me give a dramatic example. The fall of Griffon 4. Griffon 4 was a major Forge world, known for outfitting the Imperial forces near the Eye of Terror and for its Titan Legion. When Hive Fleet Leviathan, a massive Tyrannid invasion, threatened it, the Mechanicus and Imperial Navy rushed to defend the planet. Skitarii regiments dug in. Tanks by the thousands rolled off the assembly lines straight onto the battlefield. Imagine a factory literally feeding a war. Tanks coming out one end and driving directly to the front. The Titan Legio Gryphonicus deployed its god machines in force, battle banners of multi-hundred-foot war engines stomping out to face the Xenos. It was one of the grandest defensive efforts the Mechanicus ever mounted, but the Tyranids were relentless, endless. They crashed over the world in a living tide. Eventually, Griffon IV was overwhelmed. The tech priests, in their final act, tried to destroy what they could not save, scuttling facilities, purging data vaults, denying full spoils to the enemy. The planet went dark. When it was over, billions were dead or devoured, and the Forge world was effectively gone. A graveyard of silent forges in a sea of tyrannid biomass. The loss was catastrophic. Not only was a huge chunk of the Imperium's manufacturing capacity wiped out, but centuries of accumulated knowledge and unique local patterns were snuffed out overnight. The few survivors, those off-world or evacuated tech priests, mourned it like the passing of a venerable saint. This is the fate every Magos fears for their own world, and why they will sacrifice everything to prevent it. Another case, the Sabbat World's Crusade. Here, Forge worlds like Urdesh became battlegrounds when Chaos armies invaded. Urdesh was prized because it was supplying the Imperial Crusaders with weapons and munitions. The Chaos Warlord knew if he took Urdesh, he'd sever the Imperium's supply line and perhaps even turn the Forge's output to equip his own Dark Legions. The war for Urdesh was bitter and brutal, street by street through factorums and smelteries, titans dueling with corrupted Chaos counterparts amidst the smokestacks. Ultimately, the Imperium held Urdesh, but only after tremendous effort and loss, thanks in part to some miraculous interventions in the lore. But that's another story involving saints and secret weapons. The point is, wars often hinge on these industrial worlds. Even internal conflicts have racked Forge worlds, the most famous being the Horus Heresy, a galaxy-spanning civil war 10,000 years ago. The Mechanicum of that era split apart, those loyal to the Emperor and those who followed the War Master Horus, tempted by promises of greater knowledge and freedom. Mars itself erupted in civil war, the Schism of Mars. Many Forge worlds across the galaxy likewise broke into fighting or outright fell to the Dark Mechanicum, the traitor tech priests. Some of those worlds became corrupted hellholes, now known as Dark Forge worlds or Demon Forges, serving chaos. But those are beyond our current focus, lying in the shadows of the Eye of Terror or other warp rifts, churning out twisted demon engines. The Loyalist Forge worlds endured, though some were left devastated and had to rebuild over centuries. Trust within the Mechanicus was never the same after that. Paranoia runs high, and the priesthood is always vigilant for heresy in the ranks, often accusing each other of being too radical or not pious enough. Oh, the irony in a society of supposed logic and purity. But human or cyborg nature prevails. Hooks and secrets. To keep things interesting, consider some of the mysteries and quirks of Forge worlds. Not everything is just rote industry. There are legends of what lies in the deepest vaults. For example, Onye's rumor speaks of the Noctis Labyrinthus, a sealed maze complex where something ancient and powerful is said to slumber, possibly an alien god or a fragment of the machine god itself. The tech priests don't speak of it to outsiders, and scarcely among themselves, but it fires the imagination. Could it be that the machine god the Mechanicus worship is not just a metaphor for knowledge, but an actual entity bound beneath Mars's red sands? Such whispers are heretical, yet they persist. Meanwhile, other Forge worlds might harbor their own buried nightmares or treasures. A forgotten STC database, half corrupted but still holding wonders from humanity's golden age. A prototype superweapon deemed too dangerous to use. A vault of abominable intelligences. Ancient AI captured and locked away, their forbidden logic still humming in the dark. The universe of Warhammer is filled with such secrets, and Forge worlds are prime locations for them. If there's a bizarre piece of tech or lore, chances are it's hidden under a Forge's mountain of machinery. Even day to day, Forge worlds can surprise with the bizarre. Think of the moving city factories on some of them, enormous manufacturum complexes mounted on crawler tracks that slowly roam a blasted landscape to follow veins of ore, like gigantic mobile strip mines. They never stay in one place because the pollution they spew would corrode them if they lingered too long under their own acid rain. Or consider the orbitals. Some Forge worlds have orbital elevators, skyhooks, reaching up to space, gigantic tethered spires used to lift spacecraft and cargo directly to high orbit. These are engineering marvels, but also colossal vulnerabilities. If an orbital elevator ever comes crashing down, it's like a god swinging a sword through the planet's surface. Yes, that's happened to someone, somewhere in 40K history, undoubtedly. And we must mention the quest for knowledge again, the driving obsession of the Mechanicus. Forge worlds regularly dispatch explorator fleets, expeditions of tech priests on lone starships or whole flotillas. To venture into uncharted space, search for lost human colonies, STCs, or xenotech that can be studied. When these expeditions return, if they return, they might bring back technological relics or data that send ripples through the Mechanicus community. A new discovery might suddenly elevate a Forge world's prestige or spark conflicts if its ownership is disputed. There have been times when an explorator brought back something so tantalizing that multiple Forge worlds nearly went to war over who would get to reverse engineer it. Knowledge is that coveted. One famous tale tells of the discovery of an STC fragment for a novel type of weapon. The mere rumor of it caused 3 Forge worlds to engage in a shadow war of sabotage and politicking to be the first to claim it, until the Fabricator General of Mars intervened and took custody of the prize, with the logic that Mars, as the font of knowledge, should hold it in trust, conveniently for Mars. Notable Forge worlds. A tour of the Forges. Each Forge world has its own character and specialization. Let's briefly visit a few. Mars, the Forge world principle, the one that started it all. Mars is a dusty red planet turned into a glimmering maze of domes and towers. The entire planet is essentially one giant city of factories and research sanctums. It's the political and spiritual center of the cult Mechanicus. The Magi of Mars are the highest authorities. Its Fabricator General sits as one of the most powerful individuals in the Imperium. Walking on Mars's soil, or the metal plating that covers much of it, is a pilgrimage for any tech adept. It was on Mars that humanity's first Titans were built, and where the Mechanicum nearly tore itself apart in civil war. To this day, certain regions of Mars remain quarantined from those ancient battles, but overall Mars recovered and thrives. If you ever encounter a piece of equipment stamped with the Mars Forge mark, you know it's as orthodox and high quality as they come, assuming you appease its machine spirit properly, of course. Forge World Lucius. Located in Segmentum Obscurus, Lucius is known as the home of Titan Legio Astorum, the famed Warp Runners. Lucius gained renown for its adeptness in deploying Titans via orbital insertion and warp translation, hence the nickname. The forges of Lucius produce a vast array of weaponry, but they're especially noted for starship components and some of the best void shields in the Imperium. The world itself is basically one colossal foundry with deep, rich ore mines honeycombing its crust. Legends say the miners of Lucius dug so deep they had to install gigantic grav engines at the planet's core to stabilize it, a testament to their engineering bravado or recklessness. True or not, Lucius hums with industry day and night and has proven capable of churning out war material at astounding rates, even under dire pressure. Forge World Ryza, often called the Burning One because of its specialization in plasma technology. Ryza's tech priests have always had a knack and a daredevil approach for improving plasma reactors and weaponry. As a result, Ryza pattern plasma guns and reactor cores are highly sought after for their efficiency and relatively lower chance of turning the user into a cloud of ash. However, this bright star has attracted many threats. Ryza has been besieged by orc hordes multiple times. Greenskins are naturally drawn to big booms after all. Yet, the Forge world stands, its defenders wielding incandescent plasma weaponry to roast invaders. The people of Ryza are said to be as hot-blooded as their weapons, proud of their reputation and unyielding when their world is at stake. Forge World Metallica. Yes, Metallica. Not a rock band, but a legendary industrial world near the Orc Empire of Sharadon. It's sometimes called the Iron Citadel because it is literally a fortress of metal. This planet's surface is completely covered in manufactoria and steel plating. There might not be a single square meter of exposed natural ground left. Metallica has turned itself into a giant engine of production. Being so close to rampaging orcs, and more recently chaos incursions, Metallica is in a perpetual state of high alert. In the recent war zone Sheridan, Metallica was assailed by the forces of Nurgle and hordes of orcs simultaneously, a true trial by fire and filth. The fact that Metallica still stands is a testament to the unwavering, brutal efficiency of its defense, and perhaps to the luck bestowed by the Omnicia. It's said that on Metallica, even the winds sound like clanging metal, as if the air itself is alloyed with iron particles from constant smelting and grinding. Forge World Styges. 8. A name spoken in hushed tones by some. Styges 8 is a forge with a reputation for secrecy and subtlety. That's unusual for the Mechanicus, who are generally as subtle as a sledgehammer. Styges, however, specializes in stealth technologies and arcane research. They developed clever sensor-baffling systems and fielded units that could seemingly disappear from enemy auspex. Such behavior has led others to be wary of Styges the White, suspecting that they might use methods or tech bordering on heresy, like xenotech or unapproved innovations. Indeed, the Inquisition keeps an eye on Styges, but thus far they've remained officially loyal. During the Horus heresy, Styges Deut did stay on the Emperor's side, though some whisper they used the turmoil to squirrel away forbidden knowledge. Whether that's true or not, one thing is certain. Outsiders are rarely welcome on Styges Orvate, and if you are allowed in, you definitely won't be shown all the secrets hidden in those dark vaults. Forge World Agrippina. Positioned dangerously close to the Eye of Terror, Agrippina has long been a bulwark in the war against chaos. It provided countless arms and armor to the fortress world of Cadia and its neighboring systems. Because of this strategic importance, Agrippina has been attacked by chaos forces repeatedly. During the 13th Black Crusade, Abaddon's grand assault that ultimately destroyed Cadia, Agrippina was heavily besieged by traitor legions and plague bombardments. Its surface was scarred, many facilities overrun or contaminated. Yet, even with half the world in flames, the tech priests of Agrippina fought on with a furious resolve. Eventually, they held out and the remaining chaos forces retreated or were destroyed, though Cadia was lost, much to Agrippina's sorrow and anger. In the aftermath, Agrippina's forges roared back to full production, partly out of necessity and partly out of a desire for retribution. If they couldn't save Cadia, they'd at least ensure the Imperium had the weapons to avenge it. The priests there adopted a grim mantra: iron within, iron without, a reminder to fortify themselves in both body and spirit for the battles to come. Forge World Voltanus. A hypothetical example. Not every Forge world is a famous linchpin of galactic war. Some are relatively minor or specialized. Picture a small Forge world like Voltanus that primarily produces agricultural machinery for its sector, and only secondarily churns out weapons. It might lack a Titan Legion or world-ending secrets, but it's still vital in its own niche. Voltanus might have only tens of millions of inhabitants instead of billions, and a handful of Titans, if any. It could be politically overshadowed by a nearby larger Forge world. In such cases, Voltanus would act almost like a vassal paying tithe and loyalty to the larger Forge in exchange for technical support and protection. Its tech priests might constantly petition Mars or a more influential Forge world for the latest STC updates or a detachment of Skitarii to help guard their labs. Life for the people there would be a little less extreme, perhaps. Fewer toxic wastelands, maybe a small preserved park or two for oxygen production. But the ethos of work and worship remains the same. Voltanus might be the kind of place that in a major war gets raided by enemies not for destruction, but for theft. Maybe an Eldar raid to seize a device, or an Orc Big Mech swooping in to loot some fancy tractor beam from the labs. It shows that even the little Forge worlds have a role and face their own dangers. We could go on. There are hundreds of Forge worlds catalogued in Imperial records, but the pattern, pun intended, is clear. Each Forge world is a linchpin of the Imperium in its region. Each contributes something unique, and each faces constant pressures, whether from without or within. Endless thirst for resources. One thing that binds all Forge worlds is an insatiable hunger for raw materials. A Forge world's forge fanes and smelters devour unimaginable quantities of ores, chemicals, and fuel. In many cases, a forge will strip its own planet of easy resources within a few thousand years of operation. But the work must never stop, so the tech priests simply find new sources. Forge worlds typically command extensive mining operations off-world. Moons, asteroid belts, even the atmospheres of gas giants for hydrogen isotopes or other gases. Massive transport ships constantly ferry resources to the Forge planet like blood to a heart. You might see a continual chain of ore-laden barges rising from a ring of mining outposts, or automated cargo landers coming down through the smog every hour, each carrying tens of thousands of tons of metal ore. If local sources are insufficient, a Forge world will not hesitate to import from farther away. They barter and bargain within the Imperium's economy of tithes and favors, trading their finished goods or technical assistance for shipments of raw ore from mining worlds or promethium from refinery planets. In some cases, they resort to more aggressive means. The Mechanicus is fully capable of conducting resource acquisition wars, basically strong-arming a region into giving up what the Mechanicus needs. They might lean on a nearby Imperial commander to redirect supplies their way, or if push comes to shove, send their Skitarii to occupy a mine that was inefficiently run by some planetary governor. Few in the Imperium dare to protest, because a Forge world can make or break a war effort. Arguing with the Mechanicus about resources is a quick way to end up with no replacement parts for your tanks. In extreme scenarios, if a Forge world faces a dire shortage that threatens to slow production, they will use every tool at their disposal. They might petition Terra itself to grant them rights over a newly discovered resource-rich planet. Essentially, they can get a blank check to turn another world into either a strip mine or even a new forge world if needed. It's happened in history. The Mechanicus establishing a brand new forge world on a frontier planet because a rich trove of minerals was found there. Of course, that's a massive undertaking and rare in the stagnant late Imperium, but not unheard of in earlier times. A touch of sarcasm. Now, allow me a small, cheeky aside. With all this high-minded talk of devotion and labor, one might wonder, do the tech priests ever, relax? Do they have downtime on Forge Worlds, where everyone clocks out and goes home to watch the lumen screen? The answer is pretty much no, not in any human sense. The idea of recreation in a Forge World context might be a scheduled 15-minute break to recalibrate your bionic limbs or recite a quick prayer of thanks that the reactor didn't melt down today. A particularly free-spirited engineer might attend a data hymnal concert, that is, listening to complex binary code patterns that sound like an old modem screeching. Very soothing, I'm told. Perhaps a daring Magos might indulge in running an engine at 101% efficiency for a few seconds just to feel alive. But really, the culture does not encourage leisure. Idleness is seen as waste, and waste is practically heresy. If a hive city is a pressure cooker of vice and crime when off hours come, a forge world is more like an endless assembly line where the concept of off hours barely exists. Sure, individual workers rotate and sleep in shifts, but there's never a moment when everyone stops. So there's never a communal downtime where society pauses. The noise never ceases, the lights never go out. This can be hard to imagine. It's like living in a factory that literally never closes for the night. Many Forge citizens who are sent off-world, say reassigned to fight or to work elsewhere temporarily, often find the quiet of other planets unnerving. Some can't sleep without the distant thrum of machinery because silence means something's wrong. There's an old Terran proverb, idle hands are the devil's playthings. The Mechanicus heartily agrees, except their devil is entropy, the decay of all things if not constantly maintained. They like to say rust never sleeps. It's both a practical observation and a little proverb with deeper meaning. Rust, decay, is always waiting, so you can never rest on your laurels. Keep the machines running, keep cleaning, keep oiling, or the whole thing falls apart. In that sense, the people of a forge world might genuinely fear a lull in work. If the forges went quiet, not only would it feel like sacrilege, it would invite doom in their minds. A silent machine starts to corrode. A silent workforce might start to think unproductive thoughts. Best to keep everyone busy. To an outsider, especially one from a more comfortable world, a forge world existence sounds like a nightmare dystopia of endless labor. But to a loyal forge-born citizen, it's the natural order. They might pity those on agri-worlds or pleasure worlds. What do those people even do all day? How do they find purpose without a great machine to tend? It's all relative. A forge world is hell to some, heaven to others. At least those others wearing red robes and cranial implants. Conclusion. The grand fabrication, forge worlds may not be pretty or peaceful, but without them, the Imperium of man would simply collapse. They are the uncelebrated, tireless heart that keeps the armies of humanity in the fight. Every bolter magazine loaded by a space marine, every Laws gun power pack issued to a guardsman, every torpedo loaded in an Imperial Navy cruiser. All of it exists because, somewhere on some distant forge world, a legion of faceless workers and devoted tech priests toiled to make it so. They live and die amidst smoke and iron so that soldiers on the front lines have a fighting chance. It's a sacrifice so woven into the fabric of the Imperium that it's often taken for granted. In the end, the story of Forge Worlds is one of paradox and resolve. These are worlds of staggering technological achievement, governed by people who often fear true innovation. They are populated by brilliant minds who nonetheless cling to ritual and dogma. They hoard knowledge but ask their billions of followers to perform rote tasks without question. It is both a triumph, humanity harnessing worlds to sustain itself, and a tragedy, billions living as cogs so that the larger human civilization can endure. There's a bleak poetry in it. In a galaxy determined to exterminate mankind, humanity survives by mechanizing itself, by working itself to death if necessary, replacing weak flesh with enduring steel, all to keep the flickering light of civilization burning just a little longer against the encroaching darkness. So the next time you imagine the grand armies of the Imperium clashing with alien horrors or heretical foes on some distant battlefield, spare a thought for the forge worlds behind those armies. Picture the endless assembly lines and roaring furnaces, the hooded priests and tireless servitors tending ancient engines, the conveyor belts carrying fresh forged weapons into the holds of bulk freighters bound for war. Picture the never-ending work that allows those battles to be fought at all. On those smog-choked worlds of ceaseless labor, under skies stained black, countless millions offer up their toil to the machine god every hour of every day. The great work never ceases because it cannot cease. In the grim darkness of the far future there is only war, and for the Adeptus Mechanicus there is only work. Endless, wholly unyielding work.